Thanks to a comment from Jason Hill on an earlier video, I decided to start researching and educating the masses on the missing years of Atari. That is to say, the years from 1996, when Atari Corp did a reverse merger with the hard drive manufacturer JTS Storage, until 2001, when Infogrames acquired the Atari name and properties from Hasbro. Most people seem to have a good, or at least basic grasp of the time before this when it comes to Atari, and at least a little understanding of what came afterwards. But what happened to the company in this 5-year period that I just mentioned? Well, thanks to an interview with Jason Hill, we started discussing and breaking down the Hasbro era, which starts in 1998. But now I want to take some time to look at what was going on with Atari during the JTS years. That is, 1996 until the sale to Hasbro in 1998. So after doing some research, here's everything that happened to Atari, as far as I could find, during the JTS Corporation years. JT Storage, later known as JTS Corporation, was founded in 1994 by Sergej Lautandan, the inventor of the double-sided floppy disk, and Tom Mitchell, who was the co-founder of Seagate. There was various other people involved, but these seem to be the main people credited as being the founders. The purpose of the company was to create and sell inexpensive IDE hard drives for personal computers, or PCs. But inexplicably, they began to enter talks with Jack and his son Sam Tramiel, who owned Atari Corp. These talks began in the Tramiel's home as early as January of 1996. A month later, the acquisition process started, as JT Storage began establishing a new corporate identity for the purpose of completing the merger. A plan of reorganization was put into place, and Atari injected JTS with a loan of $25 million to help keep the company afloat until the merger was completed. And it was in July of 1996 when JTS and Atari merged, giving Atari's assets of $15 million in cash, $55 million in intellectual properties, and $8 million in real estate properties located throughout California and Texas, which was valued around $10 million, to JTS. But JTS also had to assume liability for Atari's previous bankruptcy petitions and more, meaning they would possibly have to take on some legal matters on behalf of Atari, or that is, as Atari's new owners. What it all boiled down to, outside of the acquisition of Atari's assets, was that Atari would become a division within JT Storage Incorporated. Jack Tramiel also secured a spot on the board of directors within JTS. And that's all that seemed to happen for the first few months. That is, until THQ licensed the Super Breakout and Battlezone properties to be released on the Game Boy. Yes, the Game Boy of all platforms. They wanted to use Atari's IPs that they had acquired in different licensing agreements. They mainly continued working with computers and hard drives, and they appeared to have little to no will or want to develop or publish games under the Atari arm. And to further prove this point, at the time of the THQ license, the Atari arm had a whopping 11 employees. That's 3 in engineering and product development, 6 in marketing and sales, and 2 in general administration. These employees would eventually dwindle down to 9 and then 6 in the coming months and year. In November, Interplay released Tempest 2000 for Windows 95 and DOS, which was a smart move on Interplay's part. Tempest 2000 was one of the best games to be released on the Jaguar, and received tons of praise from magazines and media of the time. And it's apparent Interplay understood this, because in the same month they released Tempest X3 on the PlayStation, a sort of sequel or variation of the Jaguar game, at least to my understanding. Interplay would also release the Saturn version of Tempest 2000 the following month. Interplay clearly saw value in Tempest 2000 as a game, and the licensing of it brought a bit of money into the Atari arm of JTS. But on top of the licensing to THQ and Interplay, there was a stipulation of the reverse merger that we haven't dug into yet. You see, for whatever reason, a stipulation had been saddled on the merger, where they had to continue to support the Jaguar for a full year. It was probably Atari themselves that had requested this, but I honestly wasn't able to verify. So they would have to release the Jaguar into 1997 and release games on the platform. So Atari's Black Cat was dead and buried for most of the world, but JTS had a legal obligation to support and release titles for the console. Crazy, huh? So with just 11 employees, and soon to be 6, how is the Atari arm of JTS supposed to meet these obligations? Enter Telegames. Atari handed over a bunch of completed and nearly completed video games to Telegames, and this was so they could publish them on the Jaguar. To my understanding, Telegames would not have to invest into the development of these games at all, which they had to do previously for games like Brutal Sports Football. They could just produce the cartridges and physical materials and release them. And while I doubt any stores would give them physical space, the internet age was upon us, and they could list these titles on their website for sale. And so they did with games such as Iron Soldier 2 on both cartridge and CD, Breakout 2000, and 05. Telegames to this day is a bit cagey on any agreements with Atari during this time, but the developers of some of these games, such as 05, were not happy with Atari or Telegames. They had not been paid by Atari for work completed, and now the products they worked on were for sale on Telegames' website, but Atari maintained that they gave Telegames the beta, and were shocked they were being sold, even though Atari was clearly receiving royalties on each game sold by Telegames. A shady move to be sure, but not a surprising one if you know Atari Corp during the end of their life. And so, the continued support of the Jaguar started with Telegames releasing and selling Breakout 2000 in December of 1996. More games would be released in the Telegames agreement through 1997, including Iron Soldier 2 in April, and World Tour Racing for the Jaguar CD. It was also during this time that Midway Home Entertainment would license and release several Atari collections, so JTS was still licensing out properties, and now they were getting into the process of licensing the old games themselves. The first collection of titles hit the market in August of 1997, and included games like Asteroids, Battlezone, Centipede, Missile Command, Super Breakout, and Tempest. This is also apparently the time frame when Activision acquired the rights to release an Asteroids game and a Battlezone game from JTS and Atari. I know for a fact that the Asteroids game didn't hit the PlayStation until the year 2000, amazingly, which was well after Hasbro had acquired the name and Atari properties. And according to my research, the Activision Battlezone game had hit the PC in March of 1998. But heading back to 1997 real quick, the last Jaguar release of the year hit around September in the game 05. This seemed to be the last title to satisfy the stipulation of continued Jaguar support, as there was little to nothing else until Hasbro made the Jaguar an open platform. And according to my research, that's the last real bit of Atari business that JTS was involved with before selling things off to Hasbro. And if you want to learn a little bit more about what happened from there, we did a great interview with Jason Hill, PR manager from Hasbro during the time they owned Atari, and a huge fan of the games and the company itself. But to wrap things up with JTS, they ended things by filing for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in January of 1999. And while I know little to nothing about business acquisitions and the inner workings of mergers, JTS seemed to really lack direction during most of its life. In my research, it looked like they were always looking for financing and ways to stay afloat. I was also told, and this is just hearsay, but allegedly Atari Corp and Jack Tramiel really had to cook the books just to get the merger to go through. That is to say, things didn't match up on paper at all, and it took some fancy moves to keep things from falling apart on the side of the Tramiels. This may have led to JTS getting less than they anticipated from Atari, and ending up liable for a lot more of their mishandlings of the past. But this is all alleged, and I couldn't verify any of it. It's also odd that Telegames will not disclose anything of their Jaguar agreement, even to this day. They had acquired a ton of inventory and even masters and documents from Atari on the Jaguar, and this included many completed or nearly completed games that was supposedly destroyed in a fire. This led to Telegames dropping their US arm completely, and running exclusively out of the UK, which they still do to this day. But you can acquire some of their software from Songbird Productions, if you live in the United States. And this includes titles on the Lynx and, of course, the Jaguar. But that's really all I could find regarding Atari's time as an arm of the hard drive manufacturer, JTS Corporation. It's clear that JTS had little to no desire to do anything with Atari, outside of licensing games and properties to other companies for their use. It was definitely a dark time for Atari, and I think many people figured the company was dead and over with at this point. And I couldn't blame them, really. It was bleak, but there was people out there not willing to let go of the memory and legacy of Atari. So the next time we investigate the forgotten years of Atari on this channel, I'll dig into Atari's time with Hasbro a bit deeper. Even though the Hasbro years are still probably considered part of the Lost Years, I think it was a benefit to the brand, as we'll find out. But I'll save that for next time. So now I want to hear from you guys. Do you know anything else about Atari's time with JTS? Was there more games licensed out that I missed? And did you play any of the licensed games during this time? Or maybe you were ordering games from Telegames to play on your Jaguar. Let me know about all this and more in the comments down below. And please also like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. We put out 2 videos every week on the channel, so there's always something new to check out. And thank you to these classy Atarians who support the Atari Network on Patreon. Patreons get access to behind-the-scenes stuff, early access to certain videos and interviews, exclusive audios, and much more. So thank you again to my Patreons, and if you're interested in joining, then please follow the link in my description. Your support helps the channel out a ton. And please also consider joining the Discord server to continue the discussion with like-minded Atarians, and buy some merch if you're interested. Links are also in the description. And please check out the Atari Network podcast. Not to toot my own horn, but fan feedback has been insanely positive lately. So find out what they're all raving about every other Friday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 4:30 Pacific. The next episode airs on the date on the screen right now. Okay guys, thanks for checking out our video on Atari's Lost Years. I'm the 7800 Pro Gamer, a new entity designed to merge with another company in the future here at the Atari Network, and I'd like to thank you all for watching. And remember, stay classy, Atarians.
16 and 32 are less than 64. So with 64 bits, 3D graphics, real-world animation, and lightning speed that you can only get with Jaguar, which is more advanced?
Can you repeat the question?
Jaguar! Jaguar! Jaguar!